Contemplative verses. Practical Kabbalah 2. There are two basic types of Kabbalah. Contemplative Kabbalah, Kabbalah Unit 1, which seeks to explain the nature of God and the nature of existence via intellectual and meditative techniques, and Practical Kabbalah, Kabbalah Ma'aseh 2, which seeks to alter the nature of existence and change the course of events via ritualistic techniques. Although we will see that the distinction between contemplative Kabbalah and practical Kabbalah can often be quite arbitrary, the proper definition of these two types of Kabbalah will help us to better understand the mystical discipline of the Jewish people, its limitations, and ramifications. Contemplative Kabbalah. To this category belong the majority of texts of Kabbalah in circulation, in print format, today. It sets out to explain the process whereby the created realm evolved into autonomous existence through the will of the infinite Creator. It elaborates as well upon the nature of the interaction between creation and the divine source from which it emerges. On an even deeper level, contemplative Kabbalah explores the complex nature of divine reality itself, in particular, the paradox of God being immutable and yet active and reactive in his relationship with his creation. 230. What you need to know about Kabbalah. The contemplative tradition also embraces various meditative techniques, often mistakenly identified with practical Kabbalah. These techniques are used to ponder the divine subtext of reality and include the contemplation of divine names, of the various permutations of the letters of Hebrew words, and of the ways in which the 10 Sephirot, the manifestations of divine light and energy, harmonize and interact. Some ancient forms of Kabbalistic meditation actually produce a visionary experience of higher spiritual chambers or worlds. The worthy Kabbalist will surely draw light and blessing into our physical realm by means of meditation and concentrated focus on divine unifications that take place in the higher worlds during the time of prayer. His prayers will be answered and the results manifest. He will change things for the better. This is not, however, practical Kabbalah. For indeed every good deed that every righteous individual, not just a Kabbalist, performs, in addition to having an immediate effect of drawing divine energy into reality, also changes the course of nature for the better. Practical Kabbalah. This branch of Kabbalah uses the knowledge of Kabbalah in order to directly influence nature and human events. Sometimes this involves summoning spiritual forces and commanding them to act in reality through techniques such as the ritual incantation of divine names or the inscription of such names, or names of angels, upon specially prepared amulets. Because of its power for good and evil, Kabbalah Ma'aseh is to be employed by only the most holy and responsible of individuals and for no other purpose than the benefit of creation and the hastening of the realization of God's ultimate desire in creation. The Arizal, whose teachings form the core of Kabbalistic doctrine today, exhorted his disciples to avoid the practical arts of Kabbalah, with the exception of writing amulets, for he deemed such practice forbidden in absence of the necessary state of ritual purity. 3. Chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah. 31. When the Holy Temple stood in Jerusalem, it was possible for one to purify oneself from the impurity that issues from contact with death, using the ashes of the red heifer, for at present we have neither the temple nor the red heifer and are unable to purify ourselves as is necessary for the rituals of practical Kabbalah. When performed by a ritually impure person and without the level of holiness required, the arts of practical Kabbalah can be extremely detrimental to all involved. The Ari's prohibition in effect deferred the practice of practical Kabbalah to such a time as when the temple will be rebuilt and the requisite state of purity once again attainable. The temple service was the primary framework within which the practical aspect of Kabbalah evolved. Whereas outside of the temple service we are forbidden to actually pronounce God's essential name, Havaya. 5. The rite of enunciating this name, which was the centerpiece of the temple service conducted by the high priest on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, was the source of the practical tradition. In Kabbalah 6, in addition, various other holy names of God are reported to have been part of the priest's service in the temple. 7. Like other aspects of the practical tradition, the precise pronunciations and incantations of God's holy names were passed down from generation to generation. Toward the end of the period of the Second Temple, it was determined by the sages that, for fear of them being misused by the unworthy, these secrets should no longer be revealed. Even in the temple service the incantation of the name was concealed in song, and after the destruction of the temple they were purposefully forgotten. 8. By concealing the precise pronunciation of God's names, the sages provided a precedent for those who, like the Ari, argued in later generations against the practice of practical Kabbalah. Indeed, the Ari's fears proved to be well-founded, as in the ensuing centuries we have witnessed the emergence of pseudo-Kabbalistic movements, driven by either rank opportunism or misguided spirituality, which by making use of pseudo-32. What you need to know about Kabbalah. Kabbalistic practical techniques compromised their followers' faith and well-being, and in addition harmed the reputation of legitimate Kabbalistic pursuit. But there is more to be said regarding practical Kabbalah. Based on the principles set by the sages that often the state of injury is indeed the remedy. 9. The Baal Shem Tov saw that our present unworthiness to practice practical Kabbalah, that one's found favor in the eyes of God when practiced by the worthy, is a sign from heaven that we are now capable of reaching an even higher level of divine service. He taught that the Jewish soul, an actual part of God, 10. Possesses the power to influence reality and miraculously change the course of nature by means of simple faith, prayer to God, and good deeds. Thus, the Baal Shem Tov taught that there is no longer any need for practical Kabbalah. The world at large, approaching the Messianic age, has reached a higher potential state of consciousness. By connecting ourselves to the truly righteous individuals, Tzaddikim, of the generation, those souls whose consciousness is pure and holy, and in relation to whom our own souls are individual sparks, we can access the infinite resources of energy latent in our souls to work miracles. In the future, with the coming of the Messiah and the building of the temple, the miraculous will become natural and the esoteric will become common knowledge. We will then be pure in both body and spirit, and God's ineffable name will be an inseparable part of our natural everyday state of consciousness. The power of simple faith. Because the Jewish soul is an actual part of God, its innate consciousness is known as simple faith, emunat peshuta, in God. This unity with God makes it possible for the soul to call upon the infinite power of the Almighty. 11. The following description and story exemplify the power of simple faith as taught by the Baal Shem Tov. 12. Chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah. 33. Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov did great things, the likes of which have not been seen or heard from the times of the holy Tannim, sages of the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa and their contemporaries. And he did all this through his unshakable connection, dvayikut, with the Almighty. And all this he performed without a single holy name, for all of his life he refrained from using holy names. When he was still young, his teacher, Achia Hashaloni, had already taught him all of the holy names and their use in order that he may understand and teach others. But once, when in danger, he placed a piece of cloth on the Dniester River and using a holy name, used it to cross the river. He spent the rest of his life doing teshuvah, repentance for this, and fasted many times to try to remove the blemish. The end of his rectification came later in his life when once more he found himself being chased by bandits, and to escape with his life needed to cross the Dniester. He placed his belt on the water and crossed the river without using any holy names, but solely upon his great faith in the God of Israel. When one repents truly and completely with all of one's heart, one receives a sign from heaven that the repentance has been accepted. One finds oneself in a situation similar to that of the original transgression, but this time, is able to act properly and pass the test. The teachings of the Baal Shem Tov take the simple faith of every person to previously inexperienced heights. They advance Kabbalistic contemplation beyond the realm of philosophical abstraction and into the sphere of immediate psychological insight. 34. What you need to know about Kabbalah wisdom and prophecy. More so than the practical tradition of Kabbalah, the contemplative tradition of Kabbalah provides the optimal medium for attaining divine enlightenment, while operating within the realm of the human intellect. It is explained in Kabbalah that the capacity for inner reflection derives from the realm of souls, a realm that is hierarchically superior to the realm of angels. 13. The realm from which derive the exotic forces elicited through practical Kabbalah. According to Kabbalah, the purpose of creation is to provide God with a dwelling place in the lower realms. 14. Kabbalah seeks to achieve this by channeling divine light into the progressively denser conduits of human thought, feeling, and deed, and from there into the rest of material reality. By working within the realm of human consciousness, the contemplative tradition sensitizes one to the infinite divine nuance within creation. Though the divine is ever present in our lives, without training our minds through the study of Kabbalah to be sensitive to it, we essentially remain blind to it. The elevation of thought to the point where it becomes a vessel worthy of inviting divine wisdom and understanding constitutes the peak of spiritual accomplishment. For this reason, Kabbalah sees wisdom as having an advantage over even such high states of enlightenment as prophecy. Prophecy, by its very nature, transcends ordinary experience to reach the holy, while wisdom elevates ordinary experience into the realm of the holy. The advantage of wisdom over prophecy as a pathway to enlightenment is evident from the teaching of the sages that the wise man is greater than the prophet. 15. The prophetic experience, although extraordinarily vivid in its imagery, is divorced from normative here and now sensual experience and thus remains essentially impenetrable and enigmatic to others. Through prophecy we may arrive at the ultimate approximation of divine thought, but without necessarily. Chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah. 35. Impacting the self or creation as a whole. Wisdom, on the other hand, serves to translate our deepest experiences of God and the world into the terminology of ordinary consciousness that can be conveyed and understood by others. The only individual for whom wisdom and prophecy merged into a single stream of enlightenment was Moses. 16. He was able to receive prophecy while still in full possession of his normative human faculties, thereby providing the quintessential model of rectified consciousness. He was both the wisest of men and the most divinely attuned, the greatest of prophets. The only human being who could, as it were, meet God halfway up the mountain. The Kabbalistic tradition, though grounded in the prophetic experience of the patriarchs and sages, has moved steadily over time in the direction of conveying its wisdom to progressively wider circles of recipients. This is part of a providential plan that sees the greatest benefit to God, in his desire that we sustain him, as it were, and creation in the cultivation of a spiritual consciousness firmly grounded within physical reality. This plan is evident from numerous references in the Bible. For example, Isaiah states, "The earth shall be full of the knowledge of God as the waters cover the sea." Eye to eye, they shall see the returning of God to Zion. 17. Kabbalah, as the framework within which Jews have historically evolved their unique understanding of reality, represents both a legacy of prophecy and of wisdom. This is portrayed vividly in Gematria, the system of calculating numerical values of Hebrew words and thus discerning their deeper meaning. 18. The numerical value of the Hebrew word Kabbalah, 137, is equal to the sum of the values of the two words wisdom, 73, and 64.19. Prophecy. Through the wisdom of Kabbalah, we learn to hear that which the Israelites saw at Mount Sinai. 20. Once we fully comprehend the conceptual significance of that vision, we will once again begin to. 36. What you need to know about Kabbalah. See God, but with our natural senses intact, and not only for the moment, but for all time thereafter. Kabbalistic meditation. As Kabbalah sees it, our mind is the interface between our soul and reality. We are constantly being bombarded with stimuli and sensations from the world outside ourselves. The mind processes this onrush of sensations and determines which are to be taken note of, and then sorts and prioritizes them and finally decides what response is appropriate to what stimulus, based on past experiences or principles. The way our mind functions, then, is what determines how we relate to our environment. To take full advantage of our time, we must provide our mind with proper categories with which to process reality, think about it and relate to it. Providing us with the most useful and practical categories is a fundamental goal of Jewish meditation in accordance with Kabbalah. Through meditation, we take the untamed mind and train it to think in terms of images that are true and based on the Torah. By taking a subject through deeper and deeper levels of abstraction, we reach and affect deeper and deeper dimensions of our mind, and thus gradually change ourselves and the way we respond to the world around and within us. To this end, the seasoned meditator will make use of the whole range of biblical, Talmudic, Midrashic, Kabbalistic, Rabbinic, Chassidic, and Jewish philosophical and ethical literature. The wisdom contained in all these sources serves to fertilize the potent ground of his imagination and faculty of association and produces a conceptual garden of ever-evolving multidimensional insights into reality. Furthermore, when evaluated in a Torah context, empirical information from nature can also be summoned to the same end. Meditation is in-depth contemplation of concepts and truths, in order to thoroughly understand the concepts themselves. And Chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah. 37 establish points of application between them and one's personal life. Meditation is enhanced by speaking or hearing the words of the Torah, if possible in the original Hebrew, the language of creation, and simultaneously envisioning the letters, counting them as if they were precious jewels. According to Kabbalah, when we meditate properly, our hearts are aroused to turn away from physical pursuits, egotistic considerations, and the deceit and emptiness that normally plague our lives. We turn away from these illusory states of existence and turn toward the one true reality, God. As is the case with regard to all human endeavors, the successful effectiveness of any meditation is clearly a gift from God. However, we are all granted free choice, which we must utilize maximally in order to merit the gift of God's response. In the case of meditation, we search for God from the depths of our hearts and He allows us to find Him. Many beginners mistakenly think of meditation as an attempt to negate and thereby transcend one's normative thought process. This is often the case with those who have been exposed to impure meditative practices originating with religions rooted in idolatry or paganism or associated with a denial of the existence of God. Kabbalistic meditation, however, is not a negation or destruction, rather it is a construction. In fact, the Hebrew word for meditation, hitbonenut, stems from the Hebrew root which means to build. 21 Here is one example of a Kabbalistic meditation, the subject of an entire volume, 22 which illustrates how this process works. Those who have been exposed to other practices will immediately perceive the difference. This meditation consists of constructing an imaginary meditative space in the shape of a cube around oneself, a protective sanctuary in which one is able to pray, that is, engage in active dialogue with God. 38. What you need to know about Kabbalah: the 6 faces or walls of this spiritual sanctuary are meditatively constructed from the 6 continuous duties of the heart mentioned above, 23 which are: belief in God's existence and providence, not to believe that there are any other gods, to believe that God is absolutely one, to love God, to fear God, to shield one's mind from negative influence when utilized as the walls of our sanctuary. These commandments create the space in which constant conscious awareness of God can be maintained. To begin this mediation, we imagine ourselves in a sanctuary whose ceiling is the presence of God, 1, whose floor is the negation of belief in any other gods, 2, whose front is the absolute unity of God, 3, whose right side is the love of God, 4, whose left side is the fear of God, 5, and whose back is the sentry against negative thoughts, 6. The order of this meditation follows the logic of cause and effect. We first become aware that God exists. This leads us to deny all other pseudo-deities. Once that is done, we see God in everything, and as everything. This leads us to love God, and our love brings us to fear separation from Him. This fear in turn inspires us to defend ourselves from distracting or confusing influences. Once the mental sanctuary has been built and the concepts are well understood, the classic method for ongoing meditation is to reflect on it before prayer, trying to sense or contact the divinity pervading these concepts, and using them as a method of enhancing our ever-unfolding and developing face-to-face relationship with the Almighty. But building consists of more than a skeletal frame. Ultimately, Kabbalistic meditation means adding layers upon layers of elaboration and meaning with which to strengthen and embellish. Chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah. 39 The basic structure. Each level of meditation adds in its own way to the overall potential of the meditation or the appreciation of its astounding beauty, which, of course, implies a heightened appreciation for the beauty of the Torah itself, both of which serve to increase the meditation's potency in affecting our soul, our mind, and our life in general. Notes. 1. The Hebrew word ionit, which is usually translated as contemplative, literally means with the eye, referring to what is known as the mind's eye. Deep contemplation requires that the object of contemplation become visible to the mind's eye. If this does not occur, then a person's understanding of the topic is still lacking. The most basic object of continuous contemplation is God's essential 4-letter name, Havaya, as stated in Psalms, I place Havaya before me always, 16:8. The word Havaya is actually a permutation of the 4 letters that make up the name itself, which we are forbidden to pronounce as written. Permuted in this way to spell Havaya, The 4 letters of God's essential name mean existence, alluding to the fact that God is all of existence, and that God continuously brings all of reality into existence ex nihilo. This is what the contemplative eye of the meditator focuses on seeing. 2. The Talmud relates that Rabbi created a man. He sent it to Rabbi Zara, who spoke to it, but it did not respond. He said to it, "You have been created by our friends. Return to your earth." Rav Chanina and Rav Oshea would sit down every Saturday night and study Sefer Yetzirah. They then created a large calf which they ate. Sanhedrin 65b. 3. The state of ritual purity required can only be achieved by administering the ash of the red heifer, which the sages tell us will be produced again with the coming of the Messiah. See next note. Much of the Ari's rationale on this subject appears in his disciples Rabbi Chaim Vital's volume Sha'arei Kedusha, Gates of Holiness. 4. The red heifer as a form of ritual purification from the profane, Tumia, is prescribed by the Torah. See Numbers chapter 19. 40. What you need to know about Kabbalah 5. See Note 1. 6. Yoma 39b. 7. For instance, the name of 12 letters, which is discussed in the Talmud, Kedushin 71a. 8. Ebed. 9. Kalkalado Takanato, see Shulchan Ibn Hiezer 173-1 and elsewhere. 10. Tanya, beginning of chapter 2, based on Job 31:2. 11. See for instance the Lubavitcher Rebbe's Hayam Yom, for the 11th day of Tishrei. Prayer with simple faith connects the essence of the soul with the Almighty Himself, causing God Himself to be the healer of the sick and the one who blesses the year. 12. See Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Safran, the Komarna Reba, Notzer Chest El Maseket Avot, 6, Anhavas section 8. See also Rabbi Moshe Chaim of Sdilkov, Degel McCain Ephraim, Vaishlak, Kiba Makli. 13. Invariably, man is considered to be dynamic and the angle static, as in the verse I will give you, Joshua, the high priest dynamic walkers among these standers, angels, Zechariah 3:7, or in the verse, and all the hosts of heaven stand before him, 2 Chronicles 18:18, I. Kings 22:19. See also Zohar 3, 260a. 14. Midrash Tanchuma, Nazo 16, ed. Bubber 24. 15. Bava Batra 12, based on the verse and the heart of the prophet is wise, Psalms 90:12. 16. Moses was the greatest of all prophets and experienced prophecy in a different manner than all the others because of the marriage of wisdom and prophecy in him. See Maimonides Hilshot Yesadai HaTorah 7:6. Commentary on the Mishnah, Introduction to Perikshilek, 7th Principle. And Introduction to Guide to the Perplexed and Ibid. 2, 35, see also ch. 36. 17 Isaiah 11:9, 52:8. 18. For more on Gematria and its origins, see the entry Gematria in the glossary. 19. The initial letters of prophecy and wisdom. In Hebrew spell the word, which is also a popular acronym that stands for inner wisdom, one of the names of Kabbalah. These 2 letters chapter 2, Contemplative versus Practical Kabbalah 41 are also an acronym for the impure and immodest sexual conduct exercised in youth, implying that the study of Kabbalah heals one from the blemish of these sins. 137 is considered one of the most astonishing numbers in modern physics, as it is the inverse of the fine structure constant. It is also the numerical value of the Hebrew word, pronounced ophan, literally wheel, referring to a type of angel, described in Ezekiel, chapter 1. Because of physical considerations relating the electron, understood in modern physics not to be a thing, but rather a wheel of energy, with the fine structure constant, the ratio of the speed of light to the speed of the electron, we define ophan as the correct Hebrew name of the electron. 20. Exodus 20:15. 21. In a pamphlet on prayer, Konter's Hatfilah, Rabbi Shalom Dov Bershnerson, the 5th Lubavitcher Rebbe, explains the ramifications of the common etymological root of meditating and building. Before constructing a building it is necessary to clear the ground. Likewise, before meditating it is necessary to clear the ground, that is, the mind, from all distracting thoughts. 22. See Living in Divine Space, Kabbalah and Meditation. 23. Of the 613 commandments in the Torah, only these 6 are applicable to every Jew at every waking moment. These 6 constant commandments are brought down in both the introduction to Sefer HaChinuch and in the Mishnah Berurah, Biur Halacha on the opening statement of the Rama on the Shulchan Aruch 1:1. For a full treatment of the 6 constant commandments and how they form the basis of Jewish consciousness, see Living in Divine Space, Kabbalah and